First, let's start with this case. For context, I work 4 closing shifts and 1 early shift each week, while my coworker works 4 early shifts and 1 late shift. Over time, she has frequently tried to swap my early shifts with hers, and I've made an effort to accommodate her schedule several times. Her reasoning is that she needs to rush home to care for her daughter while her husband works night shifts, and they don't have any family help for childcare. However, I've already explained to her that I can't keep changing my schedule indefinitely because I have responsibilities as well. I also have a toddler and no family to help, so I rely on daycare to balance my work and personal life. Recently, she approached me again, asking for my early shift. Initially, I assumed she wanted to trade it for a different day so she could get home earlier, which I've done for her in the past. Instead, she told me she wanted to work only early shifts, meaning she wanted my early day entirely, leaving me with closing shifts Monday through Friday. I told her no, as this change would disrupt my own schedule and responsibilities. She then explained that her husband's job was requiring him to work an extra day, and if he didn't comply, he might lose his job. If that happened, they might have to rent out their house to make ends meet. While I empathize with her situation, I still don't think it's fair to expect me to accommodate her needs at the expense of my own. I have my own challenges as a working parent, and making this change would be difficult for me. Am I wrong for saying no and not prioritizing her needs over mine? I feel bad about her situation, but I also believe that my boundaries are reasonable given my own responsibilities. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Her situation sucks for her, but that does not mean that you have to sacrifice anything. I would speak to my supervisor immediately and let them know you are not willing to change shifts at all with her anymore. And if she continues to harass you about it, you will need them to help you and step in. I would absolutely say that I would prefer all the morning shifts I can get, but I am certainly not willing to give up the 1 a week that I do have. She will 100% go over your head and try and get her way. Get in front of it. You're not in the wrong. Her premise is flawed. You are in no way responsible for the status of her husband's employment. You can be sure that if you fall for her story this time, then there will be more unreasonable demands and unsubstantiated claims. You're not in the wrong. Also, her problem sounds fake to me. Depending on where you live, it could be illegal for her husband's job to force him to change his availability or fire him without cause. My guess is she's tired of trying to politely ask you to switch with her. BC, it wasn't working every single time. So now she's trying to force you to give her the shifts she wants by making you feel bad for her. Next up, for context, I'm 31, my husband Kyle is 34, and his daughter Leah is 11. Kyle and I have been married for 2 years, following his divorce from Leah's mother, Sandra. From the start, Leah has been distant and often displays a negative attitude toward me. Despite this, I've always treated her kindly, cooking meals and even cleaning up after her, understanding that the divorce was difficult for her. Kyle works long hours, typically from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., so when Leah's school called at 1 p.m. to report an issue, I was the one who answered. The staff informed me that Leah had been involved in a physical fight with a 13-year-old girl. Realizing I needed to address the situation, I drove to her school. When I arrived, I found the principal, Leah, the other girl, and the girl's parents waiting in the office. The principal and the girl's parents immediately began blaming me for Leah's behavior, accusing me of being a poor parental influence. Leah joined in, saying it was my fault she acted this way and that I was responsible for raising her poorly. I was stunned and irritated by these accusations. I calmly explained that I am her stepmother and only play a limited role in her life. Shortly afterward, Sandra, Leah's biological mother, arrived and resolved the matter with the school. Leah ended up being suspended for her actions, and since Kyle was still at work, I had to drive her home. On the way back, Leah was angry and yelled at me, insisting that I should have taken the blame for her actions. She accused me of being the reason for her suspension and said it was my responsibility to shield her from consequences. I am now questioning whether I handled this situation the right way. Am I wrong for refusing to take responsibility for my stepdaughter's actions, or was it unreasonable for others to expect me to do so? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. But honestly, I think you should have taken a step back a while ago. You should never have been called to this meeting, and having been called, you shouldn't have gone. It should have been only Mom, or, if necessary, Dad should have gotten out of work early. I'm going to be blunt. At this point, your de facto relationship with this girl is an over-glorified unpaid babysitter, so Dad can have her during his parenting time without either cutting down work hours or paying for childcare. This isn't the case with all step-parents, and maybe it will change for you and her. But while I would certainly be nice to the girl and occasionally make attempts at bonding, I'd walk back from any responsibility if I were you. About half the subreddits are people not taking responsibility for their own actions. While the divorce, Neanderthal DNA, teenage hormones, sunspots, the 12-team CFB playoff in the Portal era, and the great European powers of the 1800s might have some degree of influence on her predispositions. Her actions are always her responsibility. No, you should not have taken the blame. She got in a fight, and that was her choice. Your responsibility is to back the discipline of the school. Feed, clothe her. Most likely she gets coddled, playing mom against dad and vice versa, to get whatever she wants and avoid responsibility every other place in her life. Very common in divorce situations. So holding her accountable is the best thing you can do. Too many people love the victim card more than life itself, then post about it on here. Damn you Romans. If you don't, later a professor, boss, or cop judge will. You're not in the wrong. This girl has 2 adult parents. I think it's even a joke that you seem to be her NOK if they called you first. It should be her mother's number they have if her father works long days. Next up, about 2 weeks ago, I noticed that my boyfriend was texting his ex. It started when she wished him a happy birthday. He didn't respond for 3 days, but when he eventually did, it seemed to spark a conversation. She kept the discussion going, and he responded with 5 or 6 texts, some about personal topics and others about the election. Afterward, they had a phone call that lasted about 35 minutes. It looks like during the call, they discussed meeting in person. However, he later sent her a long message saying he felt it was inappropriate to meet because he's in a serious relationship with me. His text was thoughtful, saying something along the lines of, "I think you're great and I appreciate our time together, but we can't meet." After that, they had a brief 10-minute call, and there has been no communication between them for the past 2 weeks. While I feel bad for snooping, I'm disappointed that he engaged in texting and talking to her in the first place. From what I can tell, they didn't actually meet, and prior to this, it seems there hadn't been any communication between them for about 2 years. When I confronted him, he was upset that I had gone through his phone and emphasized that they didn't meet in person. He explained that they had dated for 3 years, and talking to her felt like closure for him. He pointed out that he didn't initiate the conversation, which aligns with what I saw. He argued that the texts and calls were a step forward in terms of emotional maturity for him, and that he didn't do anything wrong because nothing romantic occurred, and they never met. Now I'm torn. Am I wrong for snooping, or is he wrong for texting his ex, even if there wasn't anything romantic involved? Let's start judging. You're in the wrong. He didn't almost meet up with his ex. He spoke with her, then cut it off when she wanted to meet up. He was totally transparent to her about his serious relationship with you. You're in the wrong, hugely. First you snoop through his phone. There's one red flag. Then you get mad at him for not cheating or meeting. There's another one. Then you complain that you were upset with how nice a person he is. There's another one. Seems to me there is a problem in your relationship, and it isn't him, my friend. Grow up. You're in the wrong. He spoke to another girl, and he set a reasonable boundary with her for your sake. Why are you giving him grief about it? If snooping through his phone and seeing evidence that he's being faithful to you with your own eyes didn't settle your insecurities down, then nothing ever will. You need to engage in introspection to figure out why that is, instead of picking fights with your BF about it. You're going to drive him away with your jealousy. You're in the wrong. You snooped. You saw he was still faithful to you. And it sounds like she proposed a meetup and he turned her down, not that he planned or instigated anything. As for why he called her, believe it nor not, many people still talk to their exes or replying to well wishes. It's called being cordial. If this is a boundary you have, then you need to discuss it with BFBit. It's not fair to dictate or expect a specific behavior of someone else without letting them know how you feel first. In this case, he did the right thing by turning her down, and I'd understand if you didn't want him to talk to her again. He might agree with you. Next up, I, 26F, have been with my fiancé, 27M, for 5 years. Early in our relationship, he and his cousin Steve, 30M, purchased a house together as co-owners. My fiancé's sister and another cousin also lived there for some time, and everything was fine, until 2 years later, when Steve started dating a woman who moved into the house quietly after only 4 months of dating. This upset everyone because it wasn't discussed with the household. The situation quickly became frustrating. She doesn't work, doesn't go to school, and doesn't contribute financially. Instead, she spends her days reorganizing the house while constantly on the phone with Steve. She's extremely controlling. She goes through his phone, sits in on all his calls, and ensures he's always with her or talking to her. Steve is never alone, even at work or in the car. At first, she seemed sweet, and the family welcomed her. However, over time, she began subtly isolating Steve from everyone. She convinced him to have my fiancé's sister and their other cousin move out, leaving only her, Steve, and my fiancé in the house. She's made my fiancé feel unwelcome in his own home, and has now convinced Steve to remove even more family members from his life. She's also planning to move her brother into the house, further cementing her influence. Her behavior is exhausting. She labels communal items like salt with her name so no one else can use them, reorganizes shared spaces that aren't hers, and completely ignores me when I visit. If Steve isn't home, she hides in her room and is cold and dismissive. It's clear that the sweet persona she shows when he's around isn't her true self. Some family members have expressed concerns about her controlling behavior to Steve, but he insists that he loves her and ignores their worries. While she's clearly the instigator, Steve isn't blameless. He allows this behavior to continue unchecked. Recently, she convinced Steve to buy my fiancé out of the house, so we're moving out in a week. I'm relieved to be leaving the toxic environment, but now I'm facing a new issue. I've told my fiancé that I don't want her in our new home. I'm fine with Steve visiting, but after how she treated us in a house my fiancé co-owned, I refuse to let her disrespect us in our new space. I don't want to cause drama or stir the pot, but I feel strongly about maintaining this boundary. My fiancé is torn because he wants to maintain his relationship with Steve, but I don't think allowing her into our home is the right choice. Am I the bad person for saying I don't want Steve's girlfriend in our new house? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. If fiancé cannot do this one thing for you, concerning what will be your home's safe space, get into premarital therapy ASAP. Why is his cousin and the GF a priority over the person he wants to spend the rest of his life with? If it's the old BS family excuse, you got big problems in your future. Figure it out before you are in any deeper. You're not in the wrong. However, I think you need to be careful here, Ope. The moment your fiancé moves out, she's going to find a reason to burn that friendship and isolate him from everyone. Unfortunately, Steve may be so love-struck, he doesn't see what's happening. Or, he may be living in fear, scared about upsetting her. I know this because this happened to a friend of mine. It took him 15 years to find the courage to leave her, and by then she'd burnt off every relationship and friendship she didn't approve of, and he then had to rebuild all those friendships and trust. I think you need to subtly signal to Steve that you are a safe place if he ever needs to talk. And if your fiancé has witnessed anything untoward, then he needs to document it for future evidence. It's perfectly reasonable, though, to make it clear that she's not welcome in your home. Your feelings are valid, but it's your fiancé's home too. And it sounds like he's putting more in financially than you are. Plus, you'll allow her to flip the script and paint you as the one who is controlling and isolating your partner. A better approach would be to allow fiancé to invite her over, but agree up front on what behavior from her is and isn't acceptable, and how you'll respond to unacceptable behavior. Then enjoy dropping the hammer. Nadine, when you are a guest in someone's home, it's common courtesy to greet your hostess. Nadine, is things here aren't to your liking. We can respect that and wouldn't dream of expecting you to stay. Here, let me walk you to the door. Having her in your home doesn't mean accepting mistreatment in your home.